Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin. We're going to be looking at current price action as well as macro level structure on the monthly time frame. So if you guys like the content, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on. Also, if you want to discuss this stuff and don't just want to talk about it in the comments, then check out this Telegram channel here. You can also find it in the description below. So you can see here, if we look at this macro level picture, we have the 20-week, the 100-week, and the 200-week moving averages. We've talked about when we were down here at the 200-week and we saw this candle print, I said the next stop likely is the 100-week, and sure enough, we are now at the 100-week. It was a lot of up and down getting there if you look at the daily time frame, but if you can just take a step back from the markets and look at weekly time frames, you can see that it just took us a few weeks to get up to the 100-week moving average. Now the 100-week moving average plays a critical role in the momentum of the market. If we get above the 100-week moving average, then on the weekly time frame, so if we start closing candles above the 100 weekly, then the next obvious target, just like it was here and here, is getting to the 20-week moving average. And the 20-week moving average is what ultimately signifies, a returned confidence, exuberance in the market. Like here, you can see the 20-week holding as support during the last bull market. The last time we broke the 20-week here, we saw the price go up around 4x. And even when we broke it here, a lot of people were able to see some really good returns in the market earlier this year. So the goal in the short term would be to get above the 100-week and to eye the 20-week moving average. Now, if we don't get above the 100-week and we start holding it as resistance, then clearly the 200-week would be the target heading the other direction. However, this for people that watch my channel, this should be completely irrelevant to you. What happens in the short term in terms of, if you're just accumulating Bitcoin, and you're wanting to build your position. Now, if you follow the strategy that I lay out in terms of using that 20-week moving average to say convert funds into other coins, where they typically do much better when Bitcoin's above the 20-week, then that would be something to pay attention to. But for those of you that are just wanting to ensure that you're accumulating Bitcoin, it's completely irrelevant. And the reason is because what's going on right now has basically nothing to do with the macro level picture of Bitcoin. And I want to show you what I mean. So, and this is not financial advice. This is just how I manage my cryptocurrency portfolio. You have to look at it from the macro picture. So let's do that. So here we're looking at it on a weekly time frame. Actually, let's go ahead and look at it on a monthly time frame first. So here we're looking at it on a monthly time frame. This is the price of Bitcoin. On the bottom here is the RSI. This is the relative strength index. I've spoken about it on my channel a few times. Generally, it's a good indicator for identifying when when an asset is overbought or oversold. Typically, if it's above 70, most people would say, okay, it's considered to be overbought, and if it's below 30, it's considered to be oversold. But the nice thing on the monthly time frame is it filters out a lot of noise that you might see on the daily time frame. And I want to draw a few patterns here for you. So if we start off with, we notice that we kind of have this pattern here. And you can kind of tell it's a concave up pattern, and it identifies this market here. So this market cycle that you see going on. And really, I should draw it to the second peak, not the first one, because we notice that it really goes up to this peak, but ultimately has a double peak, as we can see in 2013. So let's go ahead and draw a concave up pattern to that point. All right. Now, and forgive me, I know this isn't exactly concave up or it doesn't look like the best concave up pattern, but let's just go with it. The next one, and you can see what I mean on the macro scale. The next one looks like this. It comes down, whoops, looks something like that. Okay, so you can kind of see, this trend. You can imagine, if this had been extended, maybe it would have, come up something like that. But we'll just leave that off. You can see the current trend that we're in. Okay, And the idea that I've presented many times is the idea of lengthening cycles, and I think that is the name of the game. And so let's suppose that our next cycle peak is somewhere, say, out in the middle of 2023. Then let's draw what our concave up pattern might look like. So we're going to start up here. We're going to go down. Looks something like that. Okay, so this, again, this indicates the RSI. So when it's up here, when you see the RSI printing at, say, 96 or so, so let's draw a line so you can see where that is. You can see it's there. And then the bottom, it seems to be at around 42 on the monthly time frame. So you can basically see that we're range bound on the monthly between these points. So it's around, it's around 95, let me get it to the top, so around 96 or so at the top, and around 40, 41, 40 at the bottom. So the idea is that our next cycle peak will be somewhere over here in 2023, okay? And you can see that this pattern shows this idea of lengthening cycles. This right here, it's completely irrelevant. I mean, I know a lot of you, the move to 1400 was exhilarating for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, this move, in terms of the macro structure of Bitcoin, it's completely irrelevant to where the math would tell us that it's headed. So, I don't think it's that hard to imagine something like this continuing to play out on the macro scale. And this, when you really zoom out like this and notice that, this is it's only 3 years away. It's not that far. And this is, there's obviously some tolerance on this. I mean, maybe it'll come in 2022, maybe it'll be 2024, I don't know. The one thing I can say with, obviously I can't say for sure, but with a high level of confidence, I can fairly safely say that I don't think it's going to happen in 2021 like a lot of people think. So, if we do follow this strategy or this price point, you can see, the RSI, then we would expect the price, to do something like this, where it goes up later on, and ultimately, maybe comes up, probably not up to 200,000, but that's just where I drew it, and then comes back down to whatever the new norm is. And this, this peak would correspond to wherever the peak in the monthly RSI is, more or less. So you can see that peak corresponds to that peak. The peak in the RSI here corresponds to this peak, and then this peak, the first peak we see at 96 or so, corresponds to that peak. So this is the general idea. And this is yet another reason, this type of pattern is another reason that provides, I think, that evidence that we're talking about. And if we were to extend this for many, many cycles, then this is another reason why I put out, the path I think Bitcoin might take to 1 million. I think, if this is, say, 2023, when the next cycle, say the next bear market begins, then, we would come down on the RSI, ultimately we would see a bottom somewhere over there, and then it might come over here and then peak again back in, say, 2031, or something around there. And you can continue to see how the macro structure of Bitcoin still follows the same path. I actually was talking to someone today on Reddit about this, and they were saying, it doesn't seem to me that we are on. It seems like the price has taken a completely different direction up until after 2018, and I would argue that that's not true. Obviously, there's no guarantees that it's going to continue this pattern, but it's not true that it's not on the same path that it's always been on. It's just we're experiencing these lengthening cycles and diminishing returns. So if we were to continue this for another cycle, and by the way, I think this would be the cycle that would get us up to, say, $300,000 to $500,000 per one Bitcoin, and then maybe the final one that I'm going to draw here, anyways, if we were to come down. And then ultimately it would take a lot longer to get back up to the next peak, and maybe it would come, sometime out in 2041 or so. So ultimately, this is what I see happening. The people that were able to invest in, 2011, 2012, all the way up to 2015, 2016, even maybe in 2017, you didn't have to wait as long. and now we're in basically the middle of the current cycle. Okay, we're basically in the middle of it, and people, there are people that are losing hope. They think, I mean, we should be, if we're on a 4-year cycle, it would make sense for us to really get moving soon and to get to our previous all-time high so that we can start cracking away at a six-figure Bitcoin. But it's going to take time. Building up to that level is going to take a lot more time as we continue to push the price higher and higher. And so this is the macro level structure I see. If we were to look at the weekly, it's basically the same thing, except the RSI, because it's the weekly time frame, it is different. So you can see at the bottom, it pretty much bottoms at around just under 30. So basically at just over being oversold, and it tops out. It tops out here at 98, but it topped out lower in 2017. I imagine it might even be lower the next time around, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But again, you can see even on the weekly time frame, you can see the same type of pattern. You see this concave up pattern, where it comes like that. You can see the next one, or does something like that, and ultimately we would expect the next one, it would come down all the way probably to do. Let me redo that one. So we would expect that final one to come down like it has bottomed basically, and then go back out to say 2022, maybe 2023. So this would be drawing it up to say 2022, and then if it's 2023, it might look something like that. Okay. So this is the general idea that I want to show you. Some people will say, well, what about this? As I mentioned, it's irrelevant. The RSI, we were looking at the larger picture here and moving above an RSI, much above 65 on the monthly. I mean, we need to get back up into the 70s, 80s, 90s for us to be on this bull run getting to $100,000 Bitcoin. It's as simple as that. So looking back at the current price action, it kind of can help people take a step back. And when you look at the structure of say this, and then people are so worried about the day to day. If you're a long-term investor, if you're not day trading, again, what happens next week or in 2 weeks is largely irrelevant. I would say, for me, I'm just continuing to dynamically dollar cost average based on what the risk is at the time, and that's my strategy, and I'm sticking to it. So we'll be looking out for the 20-week moving average. If we see that come, obviously we're going to want to break above it and then hold it as support for many, many months to confirm the start of the bull market. If we get rejected by the 100-week and go back down to the 200-week, it just gives you more time to accumulate. Ultimately, whether we go above the 100-week now or we go above it in, say, 4 months, it doesn't really matter, because ultimately I think, it's several years, we're several years away from seeing those truly impressive returns. And if it does go back down, that just gives you a chance to continue accumulating at the lower prices. And one of the things I want to reiterate is it is important to diversify. Obviously, going all in on cryptocurrency is not necessarily, or it's not the safest approach. But if you can invest money that you can theoretically afford to lose, and you're not going to be that person capitulating if you see the price tank down to $3,000 or something, then I think the risk reward is fairly attractive. So one of the funny things I saw a long time ago, it's basically like, if, and this kind of, you could say this maybe to your friends who think you're crazy for investing in this asset class, and all they see is Bitcoin has gone from $20,000 to $7,000. They discount the fact that it first went from 10 cents to 20,000. All they see is they look at the short term. They see the 20,000 to the 7,000, and ultimately what's likely going to happen is in a few years, you're going to have been the smart money getting in at these price points, and they're going to be the dumb money coming in when Bitcoin, say, like $50,000, and they're going to be hugely speculating at that point. And then they get to become the dumb money, and we'll see a huge transfer of wealth. It happens every cycle. So the idea is, what you can tell them is, you know what, at the end of the day, I'm not investing more than I can afford to lose. I know the risk I'm taking, the reward seems worth it. And if in 3 years it turns out I am wrong, or in 4 years it turns out I am wrong and I've lost my investment, then nothing really changes. But if in that time it turns out I was right, I will have my driver pick you up when we hang out. So I thought that was a pretty good way to look at things. So anyways, if you guys like the channel, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also check out this Telegram channel if you want to discuss. I'm pretty active in here. We almost have 2,500 members, so we're a growing community. We're all in it for the long haul. I think it's a really good community, and we try to keep the focus of the chat on track, and the admins do a pretty good job of keeping it on track. And we will be getting a third admin once we get to 3,000 members. So if you guys like the channel enough to support it, then check out Patreon in the description below. And if you just want to enjoy the free content, that is perfectly fine. Just subscribe to the channel. All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for this video. Thanks for tuning in. I will talk to you next time. Bye.